I want to break down what's really happening in the space, but more importantly, I want to tell you how you should be navigating in the space, how you can steer clear of a lot of these mass cuts and reductions. Miss Amy Gleason, I have her LinkedIn profile up, is the acting administrator for DOGE, not Elon Musk. Is what does DOGE and government contracting have to do with you? Now, if you're in the government contracting space, y'all know me, I'm Curtis Merriweather. I want to break down what's really happening in the space, but more importantly, I want to tell you how you should be navigating in the space. I have a lot of people who are very concerned about the government contracting industry. I talked about this a little bit in my last video, so definitely go back and watch that recap. But this time, I want to tell you, if you're in the government contracting space, where you should be investing, where you should be turning your attention to. Because I know when you look at the headlines, it does look a little bleak. I understand that. So we want to go and we want to react to a couple videos, and then I want to give you some gems at the end regarding where I think you should be paying attention and where you should be pivoting your business toward in order to avoid some of the chainsaw action we're seeing in parts of the government. So this is going to be an informative video. I want you to buckle up, but I want you to walk away with some actionable keys so that you can find success in this space that are going to be sustainable.
Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, has targeted a nonprofit based here in San Antonio, saying its contract for $215 million a year is canceled.
I want you to pay attention. We're not just talking about contracts, we're also talking about grant opportunities.
Antonio I-Team Waste Watch reporter Jay Avila has this story live from the Content Center.
Mandy, in a post on X, DOGE said the Department of Health and Human Services had terminated a contract paying Family Endeavors $18 million a month to operate an empty facility in West Texas.
Why did they have to cancel the contract? If they did not cancel the contract, they would have continued paying. There's something called termination for convenience, and there's something called termination for default in government contracting. Termination for convenience allows the government to terminate a contract for a list of reasons. One of them could be in terms of the funding source. Maybe the funding has become uncertain. It could be performance issues. It's a less severe termination. The government just says, hey, we need to cut bait. And then termination for default is when you, the contracting company, has done something in error. I haven't went and looked, but I would guess this was a termination for convenience termination.
The organization is also known as Endeavors, and you may have seen its administrative headquarters and wellness center on De Zavala Road, where it has a cluster of buildings and storefronts. DOGE focused on an overflow housing facility for migrant families Endeavors operates in Pecos, Texas, which DOGE says has been sitting empty, while Endeavors has been receiving the $18 million per month. Homeland Security.
$18 million per month for an empty facility.
Security reposted DOGE's X post, tagging U.S. Attorney Ed Martin with the words, "Please investigate," to which Martin responded, "Duly noted, we are on it." I went to Endeavor's San Antonio headquarters today to get a comment from the organization. They responded late this afternoon by email. Endeavors was responsible for maintaining operational readiness at the Pecos shelter, ensuring the ability to scale from cold status, operationally ready but not actively serving children, to full use of 3,000 beds.
So what they're saying was this contract was a rapid response capability. So in the event that overflow was needed, this contract was intended to serve as overflow or capacity building.
As needed. Decisions regarding facility use and migrant sheltering locations were made by the federal government, not Endeavors. Any claims of corruption or mismanagement are baseless. DOGE also claims Endeavors.
So basically what they're saying is we didn't do anything unethical. We were doing what was outlined in our agreement with the federal government, is what Endeavors is saying here.
Endeavors received its HHS contract in 2021 after a former ICE employee and Biden transition team member joined the nonprofit.
I'm going to just say it sounds very unethical. I'm going to just say it doesn't sound kosher, but I digress.
Endeavor's government disclosure forms show its revenues shot up in 2021 from $50 million to $658 million, reaching a peak of $1.1 billion in 2022. For the News 4 I-Team Waste Watch, I'm Jay Avila.
Now, what did Endeavors do? Endeavors saw an opportunity and they put their business in the path of progress, which is what we're all supposed to be doing. When we see opportunities, we have to align our organizations with where those opportunities are flowing. And that's what we want to talk about today. But I have one more video I want to show you, and then I want to talk about how you can steer clear of a lot of these mass cuts and reductions. We're going to look very quickly at a couple, with one in particular, the executive order coming from the presidential office as of the end of February. We want to look at it, and I want to give you some guidance, whether you're in the government contracting space as a prime or sub, or whether you're aspiring to be. I want to kind of give you some insight on where you should be looking to avoid some of these mass cost reductions as outlined in the executive order.
So DOGE is cutting big. It's now claiming $105 billion in savings and counting, about
$105 billion. I remember I showed y'all the debt clock in the previous video. We had $36 trillion in debt. We were 128 and 0.08% over leverage. So to make that more common or more understandable, we are over 100% leverage. So for every dollar that the government brings in, we're already spending 28 cents more than what's coming in, which is what 128 and 0.08% leverage means. So we're overspending. But DOGE has already found $105 billion in savings per this video.
$50 per American taxpayer. And President Trump, he's coming with the receipts. Watch.
Just listen to some of the appalling waste. $22 billion from HHS to provide free housing and cars for illegal aliens. $45 million for diversity, equity, and inclusion scholarships in Burma. $40 million to improve the social and economic inclusion of sedentary migrants. Nobody knows what that is. We're going to find out where that money's going, and it's not going to be pretty. Put more money in the pockets of American families.
Of course, this is coming right from the address that happened earlier this week on Tuesday evening. Hopefully you took an opportunity to watch it. One of the things that you'll always hear me say on my channel, it doesn't matter who's in office, you need to understand what's happening politically. Now, can you have a political leaning? Absolutely. But your political leaning should never get in the way of you making money. We have to learn. One of my videos, I talk about how we navigate both sides, regardless of who's in power. As an entrepreneurial community, you cannot afford to get spun around the axle because your preferred party is not in power. We have to make sure that we're always securing the money. Always be closing regardless of political power that's in the office. Many of you guys know I have 2 national awards, one from both administrations. We have to learn how to prioritize our business and not get so overly obsessed with the political rhetoric that comes from mainstream media that we stop making the main thing the main thing. And the main thing is top line and bottom line revenue growth.
But just this morning, the Supreme Court throwing Musk and DOGE a slight roadblock. It is upholding a judge's order forcing the Trump administration to pay out nearly $2 billion in U.S. aid.
Now, what's happening here? The thing that you need to be mindful of, the executive office is balanced by the legislative and the judicial branch. And so when they make these wide sweeping changes, they have to make sure they're ethically and legally binding. So I don't want you to get all spun around the axle. You're going to see a series of court battles go forth that's going to regulate all of the things you're seeing. So this stuff has to be done in accordance with the law. And I will admit, we have seen wide sweeping executive actions in this administration. Now, every administration does them. The Trump administration is no exception. However, I think we can say that we've seen an unprecedented amount of executive actions in this administration, especially we're not even within the first 100 days yet. I think we're around about day 46, 47 as of the date of this recording.
Salary in that agency is like $130,000.
Yeah, I mean, it's nuts.
Wow.
I mean, it's not that this is it's grand theft. They're stealing. They have stole hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars. That's where the real accountability needs to go. And if you start to go after these organizations and you start to pull down one facade after another, at some point you're going to say, by the way, who got paid what and how and who offered them the job? I mean, this thing really could blow up. This could be Watergate times a million. It really could.
That money.
I mean, we're dealing with some unprecedented challenges as a result of this. But now that we got all of that out of the way, let's talk about what should you be doing as a result of these presidential actions, and how do you stay clear from the chainsaw effect? So I'm gonna refer to this executive order. I do recommend that you actually go and look at it. It is on the whitehouse.gov website for presidential actions. The one we're going to focus on today, not the only one, but we're going to focus primarily on this presidential executive action on implementing the President's Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, Cost Efficiency Initiative. There are a few things that I want to bring to your attention, and we're going to kind of run through them line by line, and I want to encourage you to look at possibly pivoting in a different direction so that you can stay clear of these cuts based on the exemptions outlined in the executive order. So I'm looking at this executive order, and one of the things that actually outlining what some of the different roles are within the DOGE team. So it's going to be talking about the administrator. It's going to talk about the agency head, because DOGE is going to go through each agency, at least the way I've interpreted what has come out of the administration. They're going to go through each agency in a sequential path. So this is kind of laying out who is the administrator. The administrator is not Elon Musk. Let me repeat. Elon Musk is not the administrator for DOGE. Okay, I want you to be mindful of that. Elon Musk is not the administrator of DOGE. So Miss Amy Gleason, again, DOGE, Elon Musk is not the administrator of DOGE. Miss Amy Gleason, I have her LinkedIn profile up, is the acting administrator for DOGE, not Elon Musk. Again, here we try to be objective. We don't run with talking points. Again, here's the LinkedIn profile. This is the acting administrator for the U.S. DOGE, which is the Department of Government Efficiency. As we talked about in the previous video, DOGE is not new. It's a rebrand of the U.S. Department of Digital Services, which was instantiated under the Obama administration. I addressed that in the previous video I did on DOGE. So that aside, so the administrator is not Elon Musk, contrary to popular opinion. The administrator is Miss Amy Gleason, is the administrator for DOGE. But let's keep moving. So it outlines who talks about the role of the administrator, talks about the role of the agency head. I want to keep moving. The agency head is the highest ranking official of an agency, such as the secretary, administrator, chairman. Is outlining kind of the roles and responsibilities and how DOGE is going to interact with the various agencies that it's going to audit. I want you to be aware that although DOGE is doing auditing, a big function of DOGE is the IT service, which is outlined. And I don't know if we're going to read it here today, but it's going to be outlined in this executive order. What I want to get to, and what I want to spend the crux of this conversation about, are talking about covered contracts and grants, section D on your screen. Discretionary spend through federal contracts. We know we start talking about federal budget. We have we have the mandatory budget, or the mandatory portion of the budget, and the discretionary. Most of where we are paid as government contractors is in the discretionary budget. And you see that outline in this order. So you're talking about the discretionary spend. So it says covered contracts and grants means discretionary spending through federal contracts, grants, loans, and related instruments, but excludes direct assistance to individuals. Expenditures related to immigration enforcement, think ICE, Department of Homeland Security, ICE Division, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, law enforcement, okay, military, so think about Department of Defense, public safety, and the intelligence community. Did you guys see that? Those are your areas that are excluded from this executive order 14222. That's 3 2s. Law enforcement / public safety, national defense or military, immigrations and customs enforcement, ICE, and the intelligence community. Those are 4 areas. If you are a prime or subcontractor and you want to steer clear of the chainsaw, those will be areas in my company I would be looking for if I was looking to do business with the federal government as a prime or sub. Number 1, law enforcement, public safety. Number 2, national defense and or military. Number 3, ICE, Department of Homeland Securities, immigrations and customs enforcement. And then 4, the intelligence community, which comprises of a litany of 3-letter agencies that are responsible for the intelligence mission of the country. In any kind of military actions, intel is one of the critical components necessary to wage a successful military campaign. So law enforcement, armed and unarmed security guard personnel, and law enforcement is what I'll be looking at. National defense, ICE, and the IC. If you're in the space, those are the areas you want to be paying attention to avoid the chainsaw effect of DOGE. I want y'all to hear me. These are the areas outlined in the executive order that are exempt. So if you're in business, you want to look and see how the products and services you provide to the federal government can be used in these domains of the federal contracting landscape, okay? That's what you need to do to make sure you're going to steer clear of the chainsaw. Now, one other thing I want to address quickly. When we go in, when DOGE goes into these agencies, okay? When DOGE is going in, they're going in with a team, and this is outlined in the executive order 14158. Each team will work with the agency head, the agency attorney, an engineer, and human resource specialist. So the teams consist of 4 people: the agency head or someone the agency head appoints, an attorney, an engineer, and HR. That is the team that's going through and taking a cursory look at each agency. Okay. Now, one of the key primers of these executive orders we're talking about briefly today, their goal is to modernize federal technology and software to maximize governmental efficiency and productivity. So one of the things that's being discovered while Elon Musk, Amy Gleason, the DOGE team, you can actually see the team actually posted online. Now, just for the privacy of the individuals, I'm not going to post their photos, but you can find who the members of the DOGE team are, okay? But remember, you got the agency head, you have an engineer, an attorney, and an HR specialist that's going through these departments one by one. Now, from a contractual perspective, so you're really seeing some modernization of technology. Remember, I told you that DOGE, go back and look at that other executive order we talked about in the previous video, the rebranding of U.S. Digital Services, which was an IT arm. I want you to think about DOGE as the new IT arm of the federal government. Now, we already know that they go away 18 months less than 18 months now, but we know they have been commissioned to have 18 months to get this job done. We know it's not a permanent organization. Again, I talked about this in a previous video, but what they're going to do per the executive order, they're going to put in place a public payment approval database at the agency level, which will require approvals of every government payment made under covered contracts and grants. Number two, they're going to publicly post the amounts of those government payments. Thirdly, government employees are going to provide written approval in the payment system for the payments that are being made. And this is going to allow the rapid review of payments by the agency head for any unjustified payments. So anything that's questionable, the agency head will be able to go and either approve, disapprove, or pause that payment. That's what DOGE is really doing. Now, I want to say this for all my business owners. If you have a contract with the federal government, this is the time, and whether you're prime or sub, this is the time when you really need to manage your scope creep. You say, well, what is scope creep? Scope creep is when you are contractually obligated to do X, and they're asking you to do Y, Z, and AA. They're asking you to do things that are outside the scope of your contract. In this environment, you want to make sure that all of the work that you're being asked to do is documented, because any scope creep that has not been properly and administratively included as part of that contract does not have to be paid for. We see a lot of government contracting companies that so want to satisfy the prime or the federal agency that they'll take on additional work outside of the scope of their contract. And I'm telling you, in this environment, you do not want to do that, because you could find yourself writing a check that you cannot cash because it's outside the scope of work of that contract. So anytime federal agency asks you to do anything, you want to do an engineering change. You want to make sure the contract's modified. And you want to make sure the money is adjusted to compensate you for any new work, any new tasks that you're taking on, especially outside the confines of that written contractual agreement. The government does not have to pay for anything that is not contractually obligated. Now, you know, the contracting officer, contracting specialist is the only one who can obligate the federal government for a payment action. If you want to learn more about government contracting, hop in my 8-figure government contracting community, and we can talk about this ad nauseum. But let's keep moving. Last thing I want to talk about, because of these IT payment changes that are being made, there is a deadline of March 28th, 2025 for the agency heads to go in and review all contracts. They need to review, they are going to modify, or potentially terminate. This is outlined in Executive Order 14222. It provides direction to the agency head to review, modify, and potentially terminate all covered contracts and grants to reduce overall federal spending or reallocate spending to promote efficiency and advance the policies of the Trump administration. Now, when you see all these employees being let go, there is something called a RIF, a reduction in workforce. Maybe we'll talk about that in a future video if there's enough interest. So a RIF action is happening. So when all these cuts are happening and people are being laid off, I talked about, you know, the $25,000 resignation or retire buyout that was offered. Prior to that, it was the 7-month buyout where employees were going to be able to basically retire, resign. They were going to get paid for 7 months plus keep their benefits. So these are actions that the federal government is taking to reduce the workforce and trying to bring down our cost to spend. But everything has a business cycle. So every area, whether we're talking real estate markets, whether we're talking businesses, in this case, we're talking the federal government, we're watching them go through a business cycle. And it's important that you know that business cycles happen. And normally those business cycles are not running in parallel. One part of the economy could be in one phase of the business cycle and another can be in another. It's important to note that business cycles are real, and the federal government just happens to be going through its own personal business cycle now. But you see there's the trough, the expansion, the peak, the contraction, the trend line. I want you to see that trend line being indicative of time versus GDP growth. So you can see that trend line is moving in a positive direction, upright, and you see that there are these different peaks and valleys on that trend line. I think many would say right now that we're going through a contractionary period, and it's just a period of time before we come back out and go back into expansion. So it's super important that you recognize the economic and business cycle that's playing out in real time. This does not mean you get off the train. Just like an investment, stocks go up and stocks go down. And if you are a savvy investor, you can make money going long, meaning you are investing for the upside, or you can also make money calling shorting the stock or betting it's going to go down. So if you're going to earn your entrepreneurial salt in this space, you got to learn how to navigate the business cycle that's happening in government contracting, and you can absolutely make money on the upside and the downside if you know what you're doing. But that's all I have for you guys in this video. I want you to tap in, click on the other videos. Definitely give me a like, share, comment. Definitely go to 8-Figure GovCon, tap in. I would love to be your mentor and guide on your government contracting journey. But until then, I'll see you guys in a future video, and definitely keep the comments, keep the likes, keep the subscriptions coming so that we can blow up this video and other people can find this content just like you did. Until next time.